Hello, everybody. My name is Michael Pokorny. I am a solution architect at Rego, and I am going to be showing off our brand new, what we are calling the MUX Migrator. But this will be a way for a admin team to migrate blueprints, views, and field level security from one environment to another, which currently has to be done manually. So I am going to jump into this. So I am in a Rego Clarity environment right now, and this modern UX migrator consists of a couple of components that are available in our RegoXChange website. Two of those there's two objects here, two main objects called the MUX Migrator and the MUX Migrator staging table, which I will explain further. And then there are a couple of processes or workflows that help us migrate the content from one environment to another. So as an admin, we would click on the MUX Migrator object, and this is where we are going to define what content we do want to migrate from one environment to another. We will be doing this in the target environment, and we will be pulling over the content or defining what our source environment is and where we want the content to come from. So to start, we would come in here and we would add a new row to the MUX Migrator, and we could call this something like Rego U release, and we could give it something like a description of migrating content for Rego U. And once we have created our migrator object, we can navigate inside of here. And this is where we will initially be defining the criteria or the source environment for our migrator. So you'll see here that there are three main fields that we want to populate. One will be that source environment URL. So this would be, what is that lower environment we are migrating from? We're going from dev to train and train to prod in a sense. So we're in our production environment. We would put our source URL here, which would be something like a training URL. So I'm going to pick one of our other Rego environments. And we just need the URL here without the slash at the end. We don't need any of the other URL like the niku/nu, any of that kind of stuff. So we just need the main URL. And then we need a username or password. So there are some prerequisites defined in our setup document of, the proper security rights you need to have and everything like that. But these will be the Clarity username and the Clarity password of your user. Okay, so this is not if we have SSO implemented or anything like that. It is not that SSO password. It's the username and password defined in Clarity. So in our case, I would have something like a username, and then the password is this user's password. So I'm actually going to be doing this, typing this in another screen, just so you cannot see what my password actually is for this. But it could be something, like the default password in Clarity is Niku 2000. So once we type this in, what we would do is hit populate stage content. So this action, which is displayed here, will kick off a process in the background, which will look at the source URL, the username, and the password that you have typed in. And it will go to that source environment and it will populate our staging table. So it's going and reading all of the blueprints, all of the views that are saved across all of the objects. So the grid views we can save, and the field level security, or the objects that have field level security. And it's going to store all of that data in a staging object. And it will tell us that once the process is done, the content will be populated and we will have a process message there. So we could kick this off and it will run a process. Okay. Once that process kicks off, we have to give it a minute to execute. And like I said, it will go in and it'll populate the staging object and tell us or allow us to choose then what views, what blueprints, what field level security we want to migrate. So when I refresh my screen here, a couple things will have happened. We will see that it says the content is populated. So that is one notification to us that it did work correctly. And we do have some process messages here. So this is telling us what has been inserted, what records might have been updated, because we might be, we might have done multiple types of modern UX content or component migrations in different release cycles. So our staging table might already be populated. When that happens, our blueprint has updated, or our user experience has updated, and now we have an additional sub-object here and an additional action that is populated or allows us to use. So we are going to go to the MUX Migrator content sub-object, and this is now where we are going to select what content we want to migrate. So the great thing about this is that we can migrate multiple types of content to the environment at once. So we can come in here and we can start adding rows to this sub-object. So I can come in here and this is going to read from our staging object and say, okay, well, I want to migrate a blueprint. What type of object do I want to migrate the blueprint for? So as you can see here, our environment has a combination of out-of-the-box objects like projects and ideas, along with custom investment types, and even out-of-the-box things like roadmaps and hierarchy. So anything that is blueprintable will show up in this object selection. And I can come in here and I can say, okay, I want to migrate a project blueprint. And once that happens, now the content to be migrated lookup is dependent on the content type and the object. And it's showing me all of the project blueprints that are in my source environment that I populated the staging table from. So I can come in here and I can say, I want to migrate Mike's blueprint from the source environment to my target environment. Along with that, like I said, I can do one to many. So things to keep in mind when we're migrating blueprints or views is that things like attributes need to exist in both environments already, and processes if we're migrating actions. But the great thing about this migrator is the blueprint will migrate with the properties page or the details page, any modules you have configured, any business rules, any actions, the create from template screen. It migrates everything from that blueprint so we don't have to manually create it. So we can pick, one too many blueprints if we want. I'm just going to pick one here. And I can also come in here and say, as part of this Rego U release, I also want to migrate multiple views potentially. So I can come in here and select a view. And I can say, okay, once again, I want some project views and come to the content to be migrated. And these are all of the saved views that we have associated to the project over here. So in this case, I'm going to say I want to migrate Mike's Project 1 and Mike's Project 2. Since this is a multi-select, we can do many views associated to an object. So I can say I want those two project views and come back in here and select view again, and now pick another object if I want. So maybe I want something like a team view, and I can come in here and say, hey, I want Mike's resource view for the staff module on my projects, my ideas, things I can staff. So I want that team view. And lastly, I'll come in here and say, I want another view from the idea object. And in this case, let's pick Mike's idea view. So right now, I have this set up to migrate one blueprint and 4 views across 3 objects. And then lastly, I can come in here and say, you know what, I want to do some field level security also. So under the admin side of the modern user experience, we can set up field level security. And I can come in here, and this is less selective because we're going to migrate all of the attributes or migrate all of the field level security or the attributes marked as secure for that object. So I can come in here and say, you know what, I want to migrate my task field level security. And because it's holistic to an object, there is no content that will show up in this list. We're just saying we want to migrate the field level security for that object. And lastly, I can pick another one and say, hey, I also want to migrate some roadmap field level security. So right now I've created a modern UX migrator content release. This could be something as part of your release cycle, or obviously can be one-offs as new views are created in environments. But I'm saying I want to migrate blueprints, multiple views across multiple objects. and field level security across multiple objects. So now I have populated, here's what content I want to migrate to my target environment. Okay, these are from my source environment. So from there, we would go back to our properties page, and you'll notice that it does blank out things like username and password after you kick off the process because we do not want to, store those plain text passwords out there for anybody to see. And we would come in here and I would type in my username and password again. Oops. And we would say, okay, because this is now ready to migrate to the next environment, we could say migrate content to the environment. So when we click on that, we will see our little message here using that action saying that we have successfully kicked off the process. And what is happening on the back end is that utilizing our process and APIs, we're going to our source environment and we are saying, okay, we want to migrate the content from the source environment to our current environment we're running these processes in, and it's migrating that content over. So once that process is done running, we will see that when I refresh my screen, we will see that our messages and our process status and our process messages will have been updated. So when I refresh the screen, we will see that one, it says, hey, it has been completed. Our process status is now completed. We have migrated the content. And in the messages, we will see that, what has happened. So we have a mixture of messages here where I have tried to migrate some field level security or some views that have attributes that do not exist. So it will tell you, hey, this attribute does not exist on this object. So, once again, that is one of those prerequisites is that we need to make sure things like attributes exist in all of the environments and are set up the same way when we're thinking about our views and whatnot. So we get a slew of messages here to say, hey, here's what has been done. We've inserted things, we've migrated a view, it started, it's completed, and we can see what has happened. From there, then, I can go look at my content. So if I go to something like our project screen here, where I have migrated those views, I can see that from my project screen, I migrated MUX Project 1 and MUX Project 2. Those are the ones that I selected from my source environment. If I go to the administration and click on blueprints here, I can see that MUX blueprint is actually here, and you'll see it was created today because I ran this previously. So I have my new blueprint here. And likewise, if I go to the admin screen and click on attributes, we will see that I have some field level security project was already there, but I have my roadmap and my task field level security set up that I said I wanted to migrate. So that is how it works. As I stated previously, it is it's two objects. It's a migrator object and a staging table that holds the details from the source environment. And we can utilize this over time to track things like, based on our releases, here's what views, here's what blueprints, here's what we migrated over releases. So we can kind of do these packages, or if we need to, we can do one-off migrations, using this content, so we do not have to manually do it anymore, which we had to do in the past. So with that being said, I would like to thank everybody for watching this video, and please go out to RegoXChange to find this MUX Migrator and download it and start utilizing it in your environment. All right, thank you.